What's going on, guys? So in this video I'm going to show you how to use Docker Compose to run a PostgreSQL container. It's very useful to use Docker Compose when you have multiple services that you need to run at the same time, and also it's useful for when you're working on a team and when you need to keep your environment stable across different machines. So the first thing you need to do to get started with this is you need to have Docker installed on your machine. And then if you're on Mac and Windows, the installation ends there because Docker Compose comes installed with Docker Desktop on those two operating systems. If you're on Linux, you basically need to do a couple more things. You need to go over here to the Docker Compose repository, head over to releases, and download their binary that's right here. Then you need to rename the binary to docker-compose, move it over to user/local/bin. Then you need to make it an executable. If user local bin is not in your path, symlink it to user bin or just move it over to user bin, however you want. If you've installed it, then you should be able to just run the command docker-compose-v. And so now we can get started. So I'm just going to create a docker-compose.yml file, and this is where our Docker Compose configuration will live. So I'm just going to create a services. So here I'm just going to define our services. And in our case, we're only going to have one service, which we'll name database. Here you can put build, which will link to a Docker file that maybe you've created, or you can just put image to basically run your container from a Docker image that's been previously created. So in our case, I'm going to use the image from Docker Hub, which is called Postgres. And then we can configure some more things. So here I'm going to configure ports. Basically, I want the port 5001 on my machine to link to port 5432 on my container. This is going to mean that whenever I get a request to port 5001, it's going to basically be routed to this port on the container. And this is the default port for a PostgreSQL database. Then I'm going to also declare some volumes because I want my data of my database to be persistent across restarts. So for that, I'm just going to use a named volume called pgdata, and I'm going to have it link over to var/lib/postgresql/data. And if you don't really remember that, you can go over here to Docker Hub and you can go scroll down to their documentation, and over here in pgdata they have an example just like that. So it's /var/lib PostgreSQL data. And then we're also going to define some environment variables like the user and the password of our default Postgres users. So here I'll just type environment. And then here you just type in basically the name of the environment variable. So this would be Postgres user is equal to Postgres, and the password is also going to be Postgres, and then the name of our database will be called Prisma. And then we also need to define the volumes and pgdata. So basically what Docker Compose will do is it will check if this volume exists. If it doesn't, it will create it for you, and if it does, it will just make sure that it has access to it. So now if everything went smoothly, we can simply open our terminal and run docker-compose up to run the services, and then -d to run it in the background so it doesn't block our terminal. Now we can do docker container ls, and you would want to do sudo on that if you're on Linux. And you see here we have an image called Postgres running. You could also do docker-compose ls, and it'll tell you that you have something running and the directory. And now I'm going to connect to it through PSQL. So with this command right here, so it's PSQL -h localhost -U for the user, which is Postgres, -p 5001, and -d is the name of the database, Prisma. And then you need the password for Postgres, which we defined as just being Postgres. And now we're here connected into the database. And we can backslash q, to exit. And basically that's it. So in the next episodes, we're going to be using Prisma to connect to this database automatically. And so we can also shut down our services by doing docker compose down, and it will just shut that down for us. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one.